Good afternoon, my AP psychos. Hope you're enjoying your snow day. Although school may stop, our class does not, because we will not, unlike the last day of school, our test is staying right where it is. So, without further ado, we are going to keep rolling. We're going to continue with what we stopped talking about yesterday. And I had you all posted last night or yesterday afternoon a YouTube video I wanted you all to watch on Harry Harlow and his study with monkeys, and that was actually part one. I think there's two more parts to it. I think they're quite a bit shorter. I think 2 is 8 minutes, and I can't remember how long 3 is. It kind of gives you a broad perspective of Harlow and his work and some of the weird and creepy things he did with these monkeys, and why probably would not be allowed to do those types of studies in today's world with the APA. But anyways, that's kind of where I think that's where we ended yesterday. So this PowerPoint I finally put it online. Thought I put it online a couple days ago, and then it wasn't the right one, or then the link wasn't right. The link took me to my documents instead of my this PowerPoint. So, and actually the one that I wanted to put up didn't work anyway. So anyways, I finally got it. It should be corrected. If you can't find it, or if you can't get online, give me an email or something. But if you watch the thing on the Harlow study, just a quick overview. He created 2 monkeys, separated a baby from its mother, and then created 2 surrogate mothers. One that was rough, made of wire, this one right here, that had nutrition, and then the one that was soft but had no nutrition. And basically he was interested to see which one the monkeys preferred. The soft touch without milk, or the monkey that had the milk but was not soft to touch. And make a long story short, the monkeys chose the soft mother. And so the idea is, and that sort of leads us, and we talked a little bit about that yesterday about the whole kangaroo care with young kids, and the need to sort of feel soft, feel comforted. Something the wire monkey, although it had food, could not do. I think we ended with this, actually, familiarity, talking about critical periods. The period shortly after birth, when an organism exposure to certain stimuli or experiences produce proper development. All right, so there are certain things that people or deer or monkeys or whatever have to have in order to develop in the sequence that these scientists see, which is normal. Again, I think we talked a bit about critical periods yesterday. One thing I did not talk about is imprinting. And this only happens in certain animals, but this is basically the process by which certain animals, ducklings are one of them, that form attachments during the critical period. So this is almost a visual thing. And with like ducklings, it happens right after it pops out of the egg. I don't think that's what did I just do? All right, I don't know what that was. I think it's supposed to be a video, but it's not working. All right, yeah, that's this needs to be bigger. Anyways, sorry about that. What Conrad essentially did was there we go. He imprinted himself as mother of these ducks, and I think this video was supposed to be him walking and those ducks following everywhere he went. Why? Because they were imprinted on him. He studied ducks and geese, changing the first object they came into contact with after they were hatched These included himself and even objects like balls. The application of this studies to humans is questioned, especially in the area of how important it is to humans, and if there is even a critical period in which contact must be established. Obviously, with humans don't imprint like ducks do or geese. Right? But as you can see, even here, the geese have they're following along with what he's doing. The question is, how does that affect humanity? We're not sure, or at least at the time they were not sure. So, and here's how each one of these theorists sort of broke down and what their main points were. In responsive parenting, we talked about Mary Ainsworth. She believed that responsive parenting would lead to secure attachment. One possible explanation of this phenomenon is that it is learned from the mother. Pups, basically baby rats, raised by attentive adoptive mothers are more likely to be attentive to their own pups or baby rats. So it just depends. I mean, and you can probably think about how this correlates with your childhood or maybe the childhood of people on the difference between attentive parents and inattentive parents. Many times there has to be a specific want to change things. So, and then monkeys, this gets back to Harlow, raised by artificial mothers were terror-stricken when placed in strange situations without their surrogate mothers. So these monkeys freaked out. If you saw on the video, they would rock back and forth. They became almost psychotic. Studies on responsive parenting, Mary Ainsworth's study said, placed young children in strange situations and then measured their response. Of course, this same thing happened with monkeys, but if you'll remember on Harlow's experiment, this was sort of a secondary thing. He studied it after he found after he started, analyzing things and had more questions. And this makes sense. Those children who were more securely attached did not react with the distress that the insecurely attached children did. All right, when placed in a strange situation. This monkey here is just inconsolable. It just can't handle what's going on. Then there's a concept called deprivation of attachment, and this is where children raised in institutions such as orphanages often are unable to make connections later in life due to the lack of relationships as a child, and it kind of makes sense. If you have a connection and then it is broken, and you go to another, let's say, orphanage or a foster home, and then that attachment is broken, or even a child that is maybe has attachment to parents and the parents can't or won't take care of the child anymore due to prison or whatever, that attachment is broken, and then they're sent to live with grandparents for a while, and then due to either behavior or other issues, the grandparents can't handle the child anymore, so that attachment is broken and sent to live with an aunt and uncle, and then maybe by that time the child's parents may or may not be out of jail or whatever the issue was, so they go back to live with the parents, and then the aunt and uncle attachment is broken, and it at some point people tend to just say, I'm not going to attach anymore. It's a sad reality of our world and of us, but it happens, and some of you maybe can relate to that a little bit. I hope not. There's deprivation of attachment, then there's disruption of which I think that was more what I was trying to explain there, is disruption attachment. Infants removed from their foster mothers experience difficulties at first, but at age 10 there's no visible effects. Well, that's one. I think this is one disruption. This is deprivation. When raised in isolation, Harry Harlow's monkeys cowered in fear or lashed out aggressively when placed later with other monkeys. And you can maybe think about this. Think back when you were in elementary school and there's maybe a new kid or something that was very aggressive, or I don't know, who might relate to this. Many later, when unable to mate, those artificially impregnated were either neglectful or abusive parents. And if you've watched the video, then you know about Harry Harlow's forcible impregnation thing, which he called his rape rack, which is very disturbing. But what he found was those monkeys who were raised in isolation basically had, they would either abuse their kids or would even kill their offspring. So some very psychotic monkeys. And of course, if you think about humanity, this relates to criminal behavior in that many people who abuse children were also abused themselves. And then 6 out of 7 death row inmates were horribly abused as children. You can go back and look at the statistics on that. A friend of mine who works for the FBI, actually, that was one of his thesis when he was getting his master's in criminology, had dealt with serial killers. So this kind of leads us to parenting styles. There's 3 or 4, I can't remember with this PowerPoint, parenting styles. We're going to kind of quickly go over these. These are things that are very important that you will need to know for the AP Psych exam. There's always questions on parenting styles. So I would at least take some notes or pay fairly close attention to this and make sure you are studying this on the Quizlet. But there are 3 major child rearing practices. The first one is called authoritarian. Parents is where parents impose rules and expect obedience. I was raised like this. This is how my mom and dad raised me, and I'm getting a phone call. And let me pause this. Hey, sorry about that. That was Kara. She's taking our tax stuff in and needing to know some information. So, anyways, getting back to development practices, child rearing practices, authoritarian. This is what I had growing up, and this is what if I'm not careful, I will revert back to this. Where parents impose rules and expect obedience, don't interrupt. This might be why, or, this might be a typical conversation. Don't interrupt me. Why? Because I said so. There's no reasoning. It's just because a parent is the authority, and you do what authority says. So, again, it's how I was raised. Probably most of your parents were raised that way too. And when that's what you know, it's hard to break out of that cycle. The next type is permissive. I had some cousins that I would say were permissive. Permissive parents tend to submit to children's desires. They make very few demands, such as, listen to me, or do your homework, or clean up, or don't do this. They don't say stuff like that, and they use very little punishment to stop behavior. So yeah, I had some cousins who grew up like that, and neither one of them have been married. Well, I'll take that back. One was married to somebody who was, best way to say it was that she just wasn't all there up here, and wasn't too long after they were divorced. But both him and his brother have struggled throughout their life to maintain relationships, and even their sister was very similar. So none of them did very well with relationships as they got older. And then finally, there's the authoritative. This is not to be confused with authoritarian, but authoritative. All right, this is both demanding but also responsive. They set and enforce, but they also explain rules so the child understands the reasoning behind them. This also encourages open discussions. This is kind of what me and Kara try to be. it's hard. I think this is a little more the way Kara was brought up, not me. So it's easier for her. This type of parenting is easier for her than it is for me. So I struggle. It's a big struggle to for me to be kind of like this. Which is best, and which according to psychology is best. Now everybody has their own interpretation of, based on their values on what is best. If you value authority, then you're going to say authoritarian is best. If you value free will and if rules are not important, then you may be more of a permissive. If you land in the middle, you might be more authoritative. But according to psychology, which has the best results? And that, of course, that is authoritative, proves to be the best style to get children with high self-esteem, high self-reliance, and social competence. Basically the best of all three worlds. With authoritarian, you'll might have high self-reliance but low self-esteem and probably low to medium social competence. With permissive, you'll get high self-esteem, low self-reliance, and low social competence. But with authoritative, according to psychology, you will get all three. So, does daycare affect attachment? That's a good question. Kara and I both worked. If both parents are working, then you have to do something with the kids. And so, of course, we chose daycare. In a study by Sandra Scar, results indicate that in the case of high-quality daycare programs, there appears to be no problems. This lends support, to the fact that kids are sturdy, they can handle a lot. High quality includes things like supportive interactions with adults in a safe, healthy, and stimulating environment in which child can frequently talk with a familiar caregiver. So there's a supportive interaction. There's comfort. Think about the monkeys in the Harlow video. This is where there's soft, kids are comfortable. A couple other studies on infant daycare. Belsky and Ziegler found children who attended over 20 hours a week of early daycare were less secure as 1-year-olds and more likely to be disobedient. Two separate studies showed that children who were in quality programs prior to 6 months of age were more outgoing, popular, and academically successful. All right. So again, there's sort of the difference between, this is 20 hours a week of early daycare versus children who are in quality programs. So again, what's a quality program? In this B section right here. Self-concept, which kind of gets us back into the sort of the psychology of development. Self-concept is a sense of one's identity and personal worth. You all know what I think of my self-concept. A lot of that's, I have fun with it. A lot of it's a joke. But I'll say this, if you all ever hear that I have committed suicide, it is wrong, and question it. And because I like myself too much. And I think you all like me too. No, but seriously, I'd like to think I have a very high self-concept of who I am and kind of what I'm worth, not only to my family, to myself, but also to you all. According to Charles Darwin, self-concept emerges when a child recognizes himself in the mirror. So it doesn't really happen until the child can actually see himself from the outside. This idea was tested by dabbing a dot of rouge, which is makeup, on a child's nose at around 15 to 18 months. The child will touch his own nose, thus showing they recognize the face in the mirror as their own. A couple more slides before we call it a day. I know you all want to get outside and enjoy this cold weather. Actually, Let me see where we are. I think I'm going to call it a day actually now. We'll get into storm and stress because it's more adolescence. So we've hit basically early and middle childhood. So Monday, whenever we are in class, if we're in class on Monday, we'll talk about the teenage years and adolescence. If we are not, then be prepared for another video like this on Google Classroom and on YouTube. So hope you all are having a great day, and I'll catch you all later. Enjoy the snow.